Elena Martinez couldn't remember ever seeing the world. She was born blind, and darkness had been her constant companion for all 17 years of her life. But if you asked her about it, she'd tell you something surprising. She'd say that she never really felt like she was missing anything, because Elena had something else, something that filled her world with colors nobody else could see. She had music. Every morning, Elena would wake up to the sound of birds chirping outside her window. While other kids her age were scrolling through their phones, she was already at the old upright piano in her living room. Her fingers would dance across the yellowed keys and the whole house would come alive with melodies. Her mother would smile from the kitchen, listening to her daughter play while making breakfast. It was their routine. It was their normal. The piano in Elena's home wasn't anything fancy. Some of the keys stuck when you pressed them too hard. A few notes sounded a bit off tune, but to Elena it was perfect. It was hers, and she knew every inch of it. Every scratch on the wood, every slight difference in how each key felt under her fingertips. That piano was her best friend, her therapist, and her voice all rolled into one. People in town knew about Elena, the blind girl who could play anything after hearing it just once. It wasn't just that she could memorize music. She could make it better somehow. She'd take a simple melody and transform it into something that made you feel things you didn't even know you could feel. Her teacher, Mrs. Robertson, would often say that Elena didn't just play music. She spoke through it. Mrs. Robertson had been teaching piano for 40 years, and she'd never met anyone like Elena. She'd seen talented students come and go. Kids who could read sheet music perfectly and hit every note with precision. But Elena was different. She played from somewhere deeper, somewhere real, and Mrs. Robertson knew the world needed to hear it. That's why, when the announcement came, Mrs. Robertson immediately thought of Elena. Victor Ashford was coming to town. The Victor Ashford, one of the most famous pianists in the entire world. He'd played in concert halls from New York to Tokyo. He'd won awards that most musicians only dreamed about. And he was hosting a masterclass right here in their small town. It was the kind of opportunity that came once in a lifetime. Mrs. Robertson practically ran to Elena's house that afternoon. She was so excited she could barely get the words out. A masterclass with Victor Ashford. A chance for Elena to play in front of hundreds of people. A chance for her talent to finally be recognized beyond their little community. Elena's mother was hesitant at first. She worried about her daughter. She knew how cruel the world could be. But when she saw the hope in Mrs. Robertson's eyes and heard the excitement in Elena's voice, she agreed. The day of the masterclass arrived on a sunny Saturday morning. The historic concert hall in the center of town was buzzing with energy. People had come from neighboring cities just to see Victor Ashford in person. The line to get in wrapped around the building. Inside, every seat was filled. People stood in the aisles. The air was thick with anticipation. Elena arrived with her mother and Mrs. Robertson. They guided her through the crowded lobby and found their seats near the middle of the hall. Elena could feel the energy around her. She could hear hundreds of conversations happening at once. The excitement was almost overwhelming. She clutched her mother's hand a little tighter. When Victor Ashford walked onto the stage, the applause was thunderous. Elena could feel the vibrations through her seat. Victor waved to the crowd with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how important he was. His voice boomed through the microphone as he introduced himself. He talked about his career, his achievements, his philosophy on music. Some people in the audience whispered that he seemed a bit full of himself, but nobody could deny his talent. For the first hour, Victor played, and he was incredible. His fingers moved so fast they seemed to blur. Every note was crisp and clear. Technically, it was perfect, absolutely flawless. The audience sat in stunned silence, afraid to even breathe too loudly. When he finished, the applause lasted for minutes. Then came the part Elena had been waiting for. Victor announced that he would invite members of the audience to come up and play. He'd offer guidance and critique, help them improve. It was what everyone had come for, the chance to learn from a master. Several people went up before Elena, a nervous teenager who stumbled through a Mozart piece, a middle-aged man who played beautifully but was told his timing was off. Victor's comments were sharp, cutting even. He didn't sugarcoat anything. Some people in the audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the encouraging, supportive masterclass they'd expected. Mrs. Robertson leaned over to Elena. "Are you ready?" She whispered. Elena nodded. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone could probably hear it. Mrs. Robertson gently took her arm and began guiding her toward the stage. The walk down the aisle felt like it took forever. Elena could hear people whispering as she passed. She felt hundreds of eyes on her. When she reached the stairs to the stage, Mrs. Robertson carefully helped her up. One step at a time. The stage felt enormous under her feet. Exposed. Victor's voice cut through the silence. "Well, what do we have here?" There was something in his tone. Something that made Elena's stomach drop. Mrs. Robertson explained that Elena was blind but incredibly talented. She'd been playing since she was 4 years old. "I see," Victor said, though his voice suggested he didn't see much at all. "Well, let's not turn this into a charity case. Either she can play or she can't." A few people in the audience gasped. Others laughed nervously. Elena felt her cheeks burn. Mrs. Robertson guided Elena to the piano bench. Elena sat down and took a deep breath. She reached out and let her fingers brush across the keys. This piano was different from hers at home. The keys were smoother, newer. She pressed a few notes gently, getting a feel for it. Taking a moment to orient herself, to find her center. "Whenever you're ready," Victor said impatiently. "We don't have all day." Elena decided to play a Chopin nocturne, one of her favorites. She placed her hands in position, took one more breath, and began. The first notes floated out into the hall, soft and delicate. She was only about 30 seconds in when Victor's voice interrupted her. "Stop, just stop." Elena's hands froze over the keys. Her heart dropped into her stomach. "Your posture is all wrong," Victor said, his voice echoing through the silent hall. "And your interpretation is completely amateurish. There's no real understanding of the piece, no depth. This is exactly what I mean when I talk about people who play notes instead of music." The words hit Elena like physical blows. She felt Mrs. Robertson's hand on her shoulder, gently guiding her away from the piano. The walk off that stage was the longest walk of Elena's life. She could feel the pity radiating from the audience. Some people were whispering. Others sat in uncomfortable silence. When they finally reached their seats, Elena's mother pulled her close. Elena didn't cry. Not there, not in front of all those people. But inside something had broken. That piano on that stage had humiliated her in front of hundreds of people. And the worst part was that she'd never even gotten to finish playing. She'd never gotten to show them what she could really do. The masterclass continued, but Elena didn't hear any of it. She sat in her seat, replaying those terrible moments over and over in her mind. Victor Ashford's words echoed in her head. Amateurish, no depth. No real understanding. Maybe he was right. Maybe she'd been fooling herself all along. Maybe her music wasn't special at all. When the event finally ended, they left quickly. Elena didn't want to talk to anyone. She just wanted to go home, back to her old piano with the sticky keys, back to where she felt safe, back to where nobody could judge her. That night, Elena sat at her piano for hours, but for the first time in her life, she couldn't bring herself to play. Elena didn't go to the community center for 3 days after that masterclass. She couldn't face it. Couldn't face the piano. Couldn't face the possibility of running into anyone who'd been there that day. Instead, she stayed in her room, listening to music on her headphones. But even that hurt. Every melody reminded her of what Victor Ashford had said. Amateurish. No depth. The words played on repeat in her mind like a song she couldn't escape. Her mother was worried. She'd knock on Elena's door every few hours, bringing food that mostly went uneaten. Mrs. Robertson called twice, but Elena asked her mother to say she wasn't feeling well. It wasn't a lie. She felt sick to her stomach every time she thought about that day. What Elena didn't know was that something was happening online. Something big. Something that would change everything. There had been a college student in the audience that day. His name was Tommy Chen, and he was studying music production at the State University. Tommy had his phone out during the masterclass, recording parts of it for his own reference. He'd captured the entire moment with Elena, from the second she walked onto that stage until the moment she was led away in humiliation. Tommy had watched the whole thing happen, and it had made him angry. Really angry. He'd paid good money to attend that masterclass, expecting to learn from a master musician. Instead, he'd watched a famous pianist mock a teenage girl in front of hundreds of people. A blind teenage girl who hadn't even been allowed to finish playing. That night, Tommy sat in his dorm room and watched the video again. His roommate looked over his shoulder. "Dude, that's messed up," his roommate said. "You should post that." Tommy wasn't sure at first. But the more he thought about it, the more he felt like people needed to see this. The world needed to know what kind of person Victor Ashford really was. He uploaded the video to social media around midnight. He wrote a caption that read, "Famous pianist humiliates blind teenager at masterclass. This is what happens when ego matters more than music." Then he went to bed, not expecting much to happen. When Tommy woke up the next morning, his phone was exploding. The video had been shared thousands of times. By afternoon, it had hit 1 million views. By evening, it was at 5 million. Major news websites were picking up the story. Music blogs were writing articles. People were furious. The comment section was on fire. Musicians from all over the world were condemning Victor's behavior. "This is disgusting," one famous violinist wrote. "We're supposed to lift each other up, not tear each other down." A popular music teacher with millions of followers shared it, adding, "This is exactly what's wrong with classical music today. Elitism over emotion, ego over empathy." Disability rights advocates joined in. They talked about how people with disabilities were constantly underestimated and dismissed, how they had to work twice as hard to be seen as half as good. The video became more than just a music story. It became a conversation about respect, dignity, and the way society treats people who are different. News trucks started showing up in Victor Ashford's neighborhood. Reporters called his agent constantly. His social media accounts were flooded with angry messages. People started organizing boycotts of his upcoming concerts. One venue in Chicago actually canceled his show, citing community concerns. Sponsors who'd been paying Victor for endorsements quietly started dropping him. Victor's publicist went into crisis mode. They released a statement saying that the video didn't show the full context, that Victor was simply trying to provide honest feedback, that his teaching methods might seem harsh but were actually meant to help students improve. The statement only made things worse. People saw it as defensive and tone-deaf. Meanwhile, Elena had no idea any of this was happening. Her family had made a decision. They weren't going to tell her about the video. They didn't want her to relive that painful moment. They didn't want her to see herself being humiliated over and over again as millions of people watched. They thought they were protecting her. On the 4th day after the masterclass, Mrs. Robertson came to visit. She sat with Elena in her room for a long time, not saying much. Just being there. Finally, Elena spoke. "Maybe he was right," she said quietly. "Maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was." Mrs. Robertson took Elena's hand. "That man doesn't know what he's talking about. I've been teaching music for 40 years, Elena. I know talent when I hear it. And you have something special, something rare. Don't let one cruel person take that away from you." Elena wanted to believe her. But doubt is a powerful thing. It gets into your head and makes a home there. It whispers to you when you're trying to fall asleep. It tells you that maybe everyone's just been nice to you because they feel sorry for you. That maybe your music isn't actually good. That maybe you've been fooling yourself this whole time. On the 5th day, Elena finally went back to the community center. The old piano was waiting for her just like always. She sat down at the bench and put her fingers on the keys. They felt familiar, like coming home. But when she tried to play, something was different. She was second-guessing everything. Worrying about her posture, wondering if her interpretation was amateurish. The music that used to flow out of her so naturally now felt forced. Mechanical Mrs. Chen, who ran the community center, came over and sat beside her. "I heard what happened," she said gently. "And I want you to know something. That video of you has been seen by millions of people." Elena's heart stopped. "What video?" Mrs. Chen realized she'd said too much. She tried to backtrack, but it was too late. Elena demanded to know what she was talking about. Finally, with a heavy sigh, Mrs. Chen explained everything. The video, the millions of views, the outrage, the boycotts, all of it. Elena sat in stunned silence. The idea that millions of strangers had watched her most humiliating moment made her feel sick. But there was something else too. Something unexpected. People were angry on her behalf. They were defending her. They thought what Victor did was wrong. "Can I hear it?" Elena asked. "The video, I mean. Can someone describe it to me?" Mrs. Chen pulled out her phone and played the video. She described what was happening on screen. Elena listened to Victor's words again. But this time something was different. This time she could hear what she couldn't hear before. She could hear the nervousness in her own breathing as she walked onto that stage, but she could also hear those 30 seconds of music she'd played before Victor interrupted her. And you know what? It wasn't amateurish. It was beautiful. "Play it again," Elena said. Mrs. Chen did. Elena listened more carefully this time. She heard the gasp from some people in the audience when Victor told her to stop. She heard the uncomfortable silence. She heard Mrs. Robertson's gentle voice guiding her off the stage. And she heard something else too. In those 30 seconds of music, she heard herself. The real her, not the version Victor Ashford wanted her to be. That night, Elena barely slept. Her mind was racing. Millions of people had seen that video. But what had they really seen? They'd seen her being humiliated, yes, but they'd also seen someone who'd had the courage to get up on that stage in the first place. They'd seen someone who didn't let being blind stop her from pursuing her passion. And apparently a lot of them wanted to hear more. The next morning, Elena made a decision. She wasn't going to let Victor Ashford define her. She wasn't going to let one cruel moment destroy everything she'd worked for. If millions of people had watched her fail, then maybe millions of people should get to hear what she could really do. She called Mrs. Robertson. "I want to play again," she said. "Really play, not just here at the community center. I want people to hear me, all of me, the way I actually play when nobody's interrupting me or judging me or making me doubt myself." Mrs. Robertson was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that would change everything. "I think I might know someone who can help with that." The next day, Mrs. Robertson made a phone call to an old friend, someone she'd gone to music school with decades ago, someone who now had connections in places that could make things happen, someone who, after hearing Elena's story, would be willing to take a chance on a blind 17-year-old girl from a small town. Within a week, that phone call would lead to something Elena never could have imagined. Something that would give her a chance to show the world who she really was. Something that would put her right back on a stage in front of hundreds of people. But this time things would be different. This time she'd be ready. And this time Victor Ashford would be there too. The woman who walked into Elena's living room 3 days later was not what anyone expected. Her name was Sophia Chen, and she'd flown in from New York City the moment Mrs. Robertson called her. Sophia was in her 50s with a calm presence that immediately put people at ease. She'd been a concert pianist herself once, performing in some of the most prestigious venues in the world. But 15 years ago, she'd walked away from performing to start something different. Something she believed in more. The Chen Foundation for Musical Arts. That's what she called it. It was dedicated to finding talented musicians who'd been overlooked or dismissed because they didn't fit the traditional mold. Musicians from poor backgrounds. Musicians with disabilities. Musicians who were told they weren't good enough because of who they were, rather than what they could do. Sophia sat across from Elena and her mother at their kitchen table. "I've seen the video," she said simply. "And I've heard the recordings Mrs. Robertson sent me of you playing. Elena, I'm going to be direct with you. You have real talent. The kind that doesn't come along very often." Elena felt her throat tighten. After everything that had happened, compliments felt strange. Dangerous even. Like believing them might set her up for another fall. "I know you're probably scared," Sophia continued. "What happened to you was cruel and unfair. But here's what I'm offering. I want to organize a benefit concert, one where you'll be the featured performer. All the proceeds will go toward music education programs for young people with disabilities. Kids who need instruments, lessons, opportunities. Kids like you." Elena's mother looked concerned. "Another concert? After what just happened?" "I understand your worry," Sophia said. "But this would be different. This would be Elena's chance to show everyone what she can really do. No interruptions. No judgments. Just her and the music. The real music." There was a long silence. Elena could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Her mother's breathing beside her. The distant sound of a car passing outside. Finally, Elena spoke. "Where would it be?" Sophia paused before answering. "The same concert hall where the master class happened. The same stage. The same piano." Elena felt her stomach drop. "Why there?" "Because that's where they tried to break you," Sophia said quietly. "And that's where you need to prove they didn't." I know it sounds scary, but sometimes we have to go back to the place where we fell if we want to really move forward. Elena thought about that old saying about getting back on the horse after you fall off. She'd heard it a million times. But this wasn't just about getting back on a horse. This was about climbing back onto a horse that had thrown her in front of thousands of people who were now watching online. "Can I think about it?" Elena asked. "Of course," Sophia said. "Take all the time you need. But Elena, there's something else you should know. Victor Ashford's team reached out to us. They want him to attend the concert. To make a public apology." Elena's mother made a sound of disgust. "Absolutely not. He doesn't get to use my daughter to save his career." "I agree with you," Sophia said. "That's why I added a condition. If Victor attends, he doesn't just apologize. He performs too. And we let the audience decide. Through their reactions, their donations, their response, we let them decide whose music really matters." The idea was bold, maybe even a little crazy, but something about it appealed to Elena. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she wanted a fair chance. A real chance to play without being cut off after 30 seconds. A chance to show people what Victor never let them hear. "How long do I have to prepare?" Elena asked. Sophia smiled. She could hear the yes hidden in that question. 1 month. 4 weeks to get ready. I'll work with you personally if you want. We'll refine your technique, choose your pieces, practice until you feel completely confident. But here's the most important thing, Elena. We won't change who you are as a musician. We'll just help you become more fully yourself. Over the next 2 days, Elena wrestled with the decision. Part of her wanted to say no, wanted to stay safe at the community center where nobody would judge her. But another part of her, a part that was growing stronger, wanted to face this, wanted to prove to herself more than anyone else that she belonged on that stage. She talked to her mother. She talked to Mrs. Robertson. She even talked to Mrs. Chen from the community center. Everyone told her the same thing. It was her choice. They'd support her no matter what she decided. But she could hear in their voices that they believed in her. They wanted her to do this. On the 3rd day, Elena called Sophia. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll do the concert." The news spread fast. Sophia's foundation announced the benefit concert on social media, and within hours it was everywhere. The girl who'd been humiliated by Victor Ashford was getting a second chance. People were excited. The concert hall sold out in less than 20 minutes. They had to add a live stream option because so many people wanted to watch. News outlets requested interviews. Music blogs wrote articles. The pressure was building. Elena tried not to think about the attention. Instead, she focused on the work. Sophia came to town and spent every day with her, sometimes for 6 or 7 hours. But it wasn't like practicing with Mrs. Robertson. Sophia approached music differently. She didn't just teach technique. She taught Elena to trust her instincts even more, to lean into what made her unique rather than trying to fit someone else's mold. "You know what your gift is?" Sophia said one afternoon. "You don't just play music. You feel it in a way most people can't. Because you can't see, you experience sound on a different level. Every note, every silence, every subtle change in tone. You hear things other musicians miss. That's not a weakness, Elena. That's your superpower." They worked on choosing the right pieces. Elena wanted to play some classical music to show she understood the traditional repertoire. But Sophia encouraged her to also play something personal. "Show them who you are," she said, "not who you think they want you to be." So Elena decided to perform one of her own compositions, something she'd written years ago but never played for anyone except her family. It was a piece about darkness and light, about finding beauty in places people don't usually look, about being underestimated and proving them wrong. She'd called it Unseen because that's how she felt most of her life. Present but invisible, there but overlooked. As the weeks passed, something changed in Elena. The doubt that had lived in her chest since the masterclass started to fade. Not completely. It was still there, whispering sometimes, but it was quieter now, drowned out by something stronger, by the music itself, by her own growing confidence that she had something real to offer. 2 weeks before the concert, the news broke that Victor Ashford had confirmed his attendance. He would perform. He would apologize. He would face the audience that had turned against him. His publicist released a statement saying that Victor wanted to make amends and show support for music education. But everyone knew the truth. His career was in freefall and he needed this. Elena's mother was furious when she heard. "He's trying to use you," she said. "This whole thing is just about saving his reputation." But Elena surprised herself with her response. Let him come, she said. Let him play. I'm not doing this for him anyway. I'm doing this for me, and for all the kids out there who've been told they're not good enough, that they don't belong, that they should give up on their dreams because someone with more power or more fame said so. Mrs. Robertson squeezed her hand. You've grown so much, she said softly, not just as a musician, as a person. In the final week before the concert, Elena practiced harder than she ever had. Her fingers were sore. Her back ached from sitting at the piano for hours. But she didn't stop. She played her classical pieces until they were flawless. She played her own composition until every note carried exactly the emotion she wanted. She visualized herself on that stage, in that hall, at that piano. The same places where she'd been humiliated. But this time would be different. The night before the concert, Elena barely slept. She lay in bed thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The masterclass, the viral video, the doubt and pain, but also the support. The millions of strangers who'd defended her. Sophia believing in her. Her mother and Mrs. Robertson never giving up on her. All of it had brought her here. Tomorrow she would walk back onto that stage. Tomorrow she would sit at that piano. And tomorrow she would finally get to finish what Victor Ashford had interrupted. She would play. Really play. And the world would listen. Not out of pity. Not out of curiosity, but because her music deserved to be heard. As Elena finally drifted off to sleep, she thought about what Sophia had told her that first day. Sometimes you have to go back to the place where you fell to really move forward. Tomorrow she would go back, but she wouldn't be the same girl who'd left that stage in tears. Tomorrow she would be someone new, someone stronger, someone ready. The morning of the concert, Elena woke up to the sound of rain hitting her window. Her mother came into her room and sat on the edge of her bed. "How are you feeling?" she asked. Elena took a moment before answering. "Scared," she said honestly. "But ready." Her mother brushed the hair from Elena's face. "You know you don't have to do this. We can call Sophia right now and cancel everything. Nobody would blame you. I would blame me," Elena said. "I need to do this, Mom. Not for Victor. Not for the people watching. For me. I need to know I can." The concert wasn't until 7 that evening, but the day moved impossibly fast. Elena tried to eat breakfast but could only manage a few bites. She practiced for an hour, but her mother made her stop. "You've practiced enough," she said. "Now you just need to trust yourself." By afternoon, news vans were already parked outside the concert hall. Social media was exploding with posts about the event. The live stream had over 1 million people signed up to watch. This wasn't just a concert anymore. It had become something bigger. A moment that people felt they needed to witness. Elena arrived at the hall 3 hours early. Sophia met her at a side entrance away from the cameras and crowds. "How are you holding up?" she asked as they walked through the empty backstage area. "My hands won't stop shaking," Elena admitted. "That's normal," Sophia said. "I used to throw up before every major performance. The nerves never really go away. You just learn to use them. Let them sharpen your focus instead of clouding it." They went to the stage so Elena could practice on the actual piano she'd be playing. It was the same grand piano from the masterclass. Elena sat at the bench and placed her hands on the keys. She expected to feel that same crushing anxiety from before, but something was different now. This time she knew she'd get to finish playing. She ran through her pieces once. Then again. The piano felt good under her fingers. Familiar now, like they'd made peace with each other. When she finished, there was a slow clap from somewhere in the hall. Elena's heart jumped. "Beautiful," a man's voice said. It was Victor Ashford. Elena felt her mother tense beside her. Sophia stepped forward protectively. "Mr. Ashford, you're early." "I wanted to practice as well," he said, walking down the aisle toward the stage. "And I wanted to speak with Elena, if she'll allow it." Elena's mother started to object, but Elena held up her hand. "It's okay, Mom." She turned toward where Victor's voice had come from. "What do you want to say?" There was a long pause. Elena could hear Victor's footsteps as he came closer. He climbed the stairs to the stage and stood a few feet away from her. "I owe you an apology," he said. "What I did at the masterclass was inexcusable. I was harsh and dismissive and cruel, and I'm sorry." Elena sat very still. "Why did you do it?" Victor seemed surprised by the question. "I don't know," he said finally. "Maybe because I saw something in you that reminded me of myself when I was younger. Before I became so focused on perfection that I forgot why I fell in love with music in the first place. Or maybe I'm just an arrogant fool who needed to be knocked down a few pegs. You didn't answer my question, Elena said quietly. You told me why you think you might have done it. But what was actually going through your head in that moment? Another long pause. When Victor spoke again, his voice was different. Smaller somehow. Fear, he said. I heard you play those 30 seconds and I heard something I haven't heard in years. Real emotion. Real connection to the music. And it scared me because I realized I'd lost that somewhere along the way. So I cut you off before you could show everyone what I'd spent decades forgetting how to do. Elena didn't know what to say. She hadn't expected honesty. She'd expected the same polished apology his publicist had probably written for him. But this felt real. Raw. Human. Thank you for telling me the truth, Elena said finally. I accept your apology, but I want you to know something. I'm not playing tonight to prove you wrong. I'm playing to prove myself right. To prove that I belong here doing what I love regardless of what anyone thinks. Victor was quiet for a moment. Then I look forward to hearing you play, he said. And he walked off the stage. The hours before the concert crawled by. Elena tried to rest in the green room, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. She kept thinking about Victor's words. About fear. About losing connection to the music. She thought about how easy it would be to let that happen to her too. To get so caught up in technique and perfection that she forgot why she played in the first place. At 6:30, Sophia came to get her. The hall is packed, she said. Every seat is filled. There are people standing in the back. The live stream has almost 2 million viewers now. Elena, the whole world is watching. Elena felt her stomach flip. That doesn't help, Sophia. Sophia laughed. Sorry, what I mean is you've already won. Just by being here. Just by having the courage to come back to this stage. Whatever happens tonight, you should be proud of yourself. At 6:55, Elena heard the crowd in the hall. The murmur of hundreds of conversations. The rustle of programs. The occasional cough. She heard Sophia walk onto the stage to introduce the evening. The crowd quieted immediately. Thank you all for being here, Sophia's voice came through clearly. Tonight is about more than music. It's about resilience. It's about giving second chances. It's about remembering that art is supposed to connect us, not divide us. We have 2 performers tonight. First, Victor Ashford, who has graciously agreed to perform and to make a contribution to our foundation's music education programs. There was polite applause. Not warm, but not hostile either. Elena listened as Victor walked onto the stage. She heard him sit at the piano, adjust the bench, place his hands on the keys. Then he began to play. Victor had chosen Rachmaninoff, Piano Concerto No. 2. It was one of the most technically difficult pieces in the classical repertoire, and Victor played it flawlessly. Every note was perfect. Every run was clean. Every chord was precisely voiced. It was a masterclass in technical perfection. But as Elena listened, she understood what Victor had meant earlier. It was perfect, but it was cold, like watching a machine perform calculations. Impressive, but not moving. Not in the way music should move you. When he finished, the audience applauded. It was strong applause, respectful, but there was something missing in it. Some warmth that wasn't quite there. Then it was Elena's turn. Her mother took her arm and guided her to the wings of the stage. Elena could feel her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. Sophia's voice came again. And now please welcome Elena Martinez. The applause was different this time. Warmer, louder. Elena could feel the support in it. People were on her side. They wanted her to succeed. But she also knew they were watching with curiosity, wondering if she really had what it took. Wondering if the viral video had shown her at her best or if that was all she had. Her mother squeezed her hand. You've got this, baby, she whispered. Then Elena felt Sophia take her other arm and begin guiding her onto the stage. The walk across the stage felt eternal. Elena could sense the audience watching her. Hundreds of pairs of eyes. Millions more watching on screens around the world. She could hear the cameras clicking. The slight shuffle as people leaned forward in their seats. The weight of expectation pressing down on her from all sides. Sophia guided her to the piano bench and helped her sit. Then she leaned close and whispered, "Remember why you play. Not for them, for you. For the music. For the joy of it." Then Sophia's footsteps retreated and Elena was alone on the stage. She took a deep breath. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling their familiar smoothness under her fingers. She thought about all the hours she'd spent at her old piano at home, all the mornings she'd woken up early just to play, all the times music had been her voice when words weren't enough. She thought about why she'd fallen in love with the piano in the first place, and then, with the whole world watching and holding its breath, Elena began to play. The first notes were soft, delicate, like a question being asked. She'd chosen to open with her own composition, Unseen. The piece she'd written about being present but invisible, about finding beauty in darkness, about being more than what people saw when they looked at you. The melody started simple, almost childlike, but it grew. It deepened. It became more complex, more layered. Elena's fingers moved across the keys with a confidence she'd never felt before. She wasn't thinking about her posture or her technique. She wasn't worried about what Victor or the audience thought. She was just playing. Really playing. Letting the music flow through her without filter or fear, and something magical began to happen in that hall. Elena could feel it happening. That shift in the air when a room full of strangers stops being a crowd and becomes something else, something connected. She couldn't see their faces, but she could feel their attention, not the judgmental, skeptical attention from the masterclass. This was different. They were listening, really listening. Her composition flowed from gentle to powerful, from questioning to certain. The piece told a story without words, about being dismissed, about doubt creeping in like darkness, but then about finding your own light, about realizing that what others can't see in you doesn't make it any less real. The music swelled and fell, whispered and roared. Elena's whole body moved with it, rocking slightly as her hands danced across the keys. When the final note faded into silence, Elena sat very still. For a moment there was nothing. Complete quiet. Elena's heart sank. Had she made a mistake? Had she misread everything? But then she heard it. A single person standing up. The sound of their applause. Then another person. Then another. Within seconds, the entire hall was on its feet. The applause wasn't just loud. It was thunderous. It rolled over Elena like a wave, and for a moment she felt overwhelmed. Her eyes filled with tears. Her mother later told her that people weren't just clapping. Many were crying. The camera operators had tears running down their faces as they filmed. Even some of the ushers were wiping their eyes. But Elena wasn't finished. She waited for the applause to settle, and then she began her second piece, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. It was a risk following her own composition with something so well known. Everyone had heard it 1,000 times, but Elena didn't play it the way everyone else did. She played it the way she felt it. She took the familiar melody and made it new again, made it fresh, made it hers. The third movement, usually played with aggressive precision, came alive under her fingers in a different way. It still had power, still had intensity, but there was something else there too, something vulnerable underneath all that strength. Like she was saying that being powerful didn't mean you couldn't also be gentle. That strength and softness could exist together. When she finished Beethoven, Elena surprised everyone by transitioning immediately into something completely different, jazz. She began improvising, taking a simple melody and building on it, changing it, playing with it. Her fingers flew across the keys, creating music that had never existed before and would never exist again in quite the same way. This wasn't in the program. This wasn't planned. This was just Elena being herself, showing everyone the full range of what she could do. Some classical music purists in the audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't traditional. This wasn't how things were supposed to be done. But most people were mesmerized. They were watching someone completely free, completely in the moment, completely connected to their art. This was what music was supposed to be, not rigid rules and perfect technique, but joy, expression, truth. Elena finally brought the improvisation to a close and lifted her hands from the keys. This time the silence lasted even longer. It was the kind of silence that happens when people don't want to break the spell, when they want to hold on to what they just experienced for as long as possible, when applause almost seems like an interruption. But then it came, the applause. And this time it was even louder than before. People weren't just standing. They were cheering, shouting. Some people had their hands over their hearts. Others had their hands over their mouths in disbelief. The applause went on and on. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Elena sat at the piano, overwhelmed, not quite believing what was happening. Sophia came onto the stage and guided Elena to her feet. "Take a bow," she whispered. Elena bowed toward where she imagined the audience was. The applause grew even louder. She could hear people calling her name. She could hear the emotion in their voices. This wasn't pity. This wasn't sympathy. This was genuine appreciation for what she'd just shared with them. Backstage, Elena's mother wrapped her in the tightest hug of her life. She was sobbing. "I'm so proud of you," she kept saying. So proud. Mrs. Robertson was there too, crying just as hard. "I knew it," she said. "I always knew you had this in you." But there was someone else waiting to speak with Elena. She heard his footsteps approach. "Victor Ashford." "That was extraordinary," he said, and his voice was thick with emotion. "I've been playing piano for 40 years. I've performed in every major concert hall in the world. And what you just did up there, that was some of the most honest, most moving music I've ever heard." Elena didn't know what to say. This man who had humiliated her, who had called her amateurish and lacking in depth, was now praising her. Part of her wanted to feel vindicated, to say "I told you so," but mostly she just felt tired and grateful that it was over, that she'd done what she came to do. "Thank you," Elena said simply, "for coming tonight, for being honest earlier, for showing me that even people who seem perfect struggle with the same things I do." Victor laughed, but it was a sad sound. "Perfect? I'm far from perfect, Elena. Tonight proved that. You played with heart. I played with technique. And everyone in that room knew the difference. You taught me something important. You reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Music isn't about being flawless. It's about being fearless enough to show people who you really are." The rest of the evening was a blur. People wanted to meet Elena, to shake her hand, to tell her how her music had moved them. Representatives from music schools showed up, offering scholarships. Recording studios wanted to work with her. Major news outlets wanted interviews. It was overwhelming and exciting and exhausting all at once. But the moment that mattered most to Elena came later, when things had finally quieted down. She was sitting in the green room with just her mother and Sophia. "You know what the best part was?" Elena said. "When I was up there playing, I forgot to be scared. I forgot about the cameras and the audience and the live stream. I just remembered why I love music. I remembered that it's not about proving anything to anyone. It's about expressing something that can't be expressed any other way." Sophia smiled. "That's what separates good musicians from great ones. Good musicians play for the audience. Great musicians play for the music itself, and the audience comes along for the ride." The benefit concert raised over $2 million for music education programs, but the money wasn't the real story. The real story was about a girl who'd been knocked down and got back up, who'd been told she wasn't good enough and proved that the only opinion that mattered was her own, who'd taken her biggest moment of humiliation and transformed it into her greatest triumph. In the weeks that followed, Elena's life changed in ways she never imagined. She accepted a full scholarship to one of the best music conservatories in the country. She recorded her first album, which included her composition Unseen and became a surprise hit. She started giving talks at schools about resilience and following your passion despite obstacles. Young musicians with disabilities started reaching out to her, telling her that she'd inspired them to keep going. But Elena never forgot where she came from. She still went back to that old community center whenever she was in town. She still played that upright piano with the sticky keys and the slightly off-tune notes, because that piano represented something important. It represented the time before the fame and the recognition, when music was just hers, when she played for the pure joy of it. Victor Ashford's career recovered, but he was different after that night. He started teaching differently, more kindly, more focused on helping students find their own voice rather than imposing his vision on them. He and Elena stayed in touch, forming an unlikely friendship built on mutual respect and the understanding that everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has moments they're not proud of. What matters is what you do next. Years later, when Elena was asked about that night in interviews, she always said the same thing. It wasn't about Victor. It wasn't about proving people wrong. It was about proving something to myself, that I had the courage to get back on that stage, that I had the strength to be vulnerable in front of millions of people, that I could take the worst moment of my life and transform it into something beautiful. Because that's what music does. It takes our pain and our joy and our fear and our hope, and it turns it all into something we can share with each other. something that reminds us we're not alone. And whenever Elena sat down at a piano, whether it was in a concert hall filled with thousands or in her living room with just her mother listening, she remembered that feeling, that magical moment when the whole world stood still, not because of who she was or what she could see, but because of what she could make others feel. Because of the music that lived inside her and demanded to be heard. Because she'd learned the most important lesson of all, that the only person who could silence her music was herself, and she had decided once and for all to let it play.